Hare Krishna. Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Padavajakacarya Ashtotar Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Padavajakacarya Ashtotar Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 26th day of March 2024 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 6 entitled Dhyāna-yoga, the yoga of meditation, page 273. And we're studying text number 18 tonight. Beginning with text 18. Yeah. Okay. Yada viniyatam chittam atmani eva bhatishtete nispriha sarvakamebhyo yukta iti uchyate tada. Yada viniyatam chittam Atmanyeva bhatishtete nispriha sarvakamebhyo yukta ityuchyate tada. Yada viniyatam chittam Atmanyeva bhatishtete nispriha sarvakamebhyo yukta ityuchyate tada. Yada viniyatam chittam atmanyeva bhatishtete nispriha sarvakamebhyo yukta ityuchyate tada. Go ahead, Nelson. Yada viniyatam chittam atmanyeva bhatishtete nispriha sarvakamebhyo yukta ityuchyate tada. Yada viniyatam chittam atmanyeva bhatishtete nispriha sarvakamebhyo yukta ityuchyate tada. I guess no one else is in the room will chant. Can you possibly move over to this side? We may have some other men coming. No, just her. Is it okay? Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. Uh-oh. Oh, you all right? Okay. Yeah, oh, all right. Well, now we have two books. Yes, he'll take it. Yeah, page 273. Okay. All right, I'll read the word by words myself. Yada, when, viniyatam, particularly disciplined, chittam, the mind and its activities. Atmani, in the transcendence, eva, certainly, avatishtate, becomes situated. Nispriha, devoid of desire, sarva, for all kinds of, kamebhya, material sense gratification, yuktaha, well situated in yoga, iti, thus, uchyate, is said to be tada at that time. Translation. Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, when the yogi, by practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, he is said to be well established in yoga. Purport. The activities of the yogi are distinguished from those of an ordinary person by his characteristic cessation from all kinds of material desires, of which sex is the chief. A perfect yogi is so well disciplined in the activities of the mind that he can no longer be disturbed by any kind of material desire. This perfectional stage can automatically be attained by persons in Krishna consciousness, as stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 9:4-18-20. So I'll read these myself. Savaimana Krishna Padara Bindayor Bachangsi Vaikunda Godanu Varnane Karo Hare Mandida Marjanadishu Shrutim chakara chita satkato deye Pakundalingala yadarshane drishao Tadbritya gatra sparshinga sangamam Granam chatatpada soroja saurabhe Srimat tulasya vasanang tararpite Pado hare cheta badanu sarpane Shiro rishikesha badabhivandane Kaman chadasi natu kama kameya Yatottama shloka janashraya ratihi. King Ambarish first of all engaged his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Then, one after another, he engaged his words in describing the transcendental qualities of the Lord, his hands in mopping the temple of the Lord, his ears in hearing of the activities of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the transcendental forms of the Lord, his body in touching the bodies of the devotees, his sense of smell in smelling the scents of the lotus flowers offered to the Lord, his tongue in tasting the tulsi leaf offered at the lotus feet of the Lord, his legs in going to places of pilgrimage and the temple of the Lord, his head in offering obeisances unto the Lord, and his desires in executing the mission of the Lord. All these transcendental activities are quite befitting a pure devotee." Close quote. This transcendental stage may be inexpressible subjectively by the followers of the impersonalist path, but it becomes very easy and practical for a person in Krishna consciousness, as is apparent in the above description of the engagements of Maharaj Ambarish. Unless the mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord by constant remembrance, such transcendental engagements are not practical. In the devotional service of the Lord, therefore, these prescribed activities are called archana, or engaging all the senses in the service of the Lord. The senses and the mind require engagements. Simple abnegation is not practical. Therefore, for people in general, especially those who are not in the renounced order of life, transcendental engagement of the senses and the mind, as described above, is the perfect process for transcendental achievement, which is called yukta in the Bhagavad Gita. Om jnana timarandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshu unmilitam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. Hare Krishna. Welcome. Nice to see you. So you got the page 273, 274. Yeah. Yeah, we're back into 273 is the verse that we're studying now. So what this chapter is all about is, as mentioned in the title, Dhyāna-yoga. Dhyāna means meditation. And some of you, yoga is so popular in the West today that you may have seen, the yogis sitting in trance like this, with the lotus posture and with back, Krishna describes, with back very straight. And generally it's supposed to take place in a secluded place where there's no distraction. The whole idea is to focus the mind and to control the mind and fix it on the Supreme. The Supreme has different manifestations. For the yogi, generally it's the Lord in the heart that they're trying to see. They're trying to meditate on the manifestation of God within their own heart. And it's very difficult because, first of all, they're alone and they are practicing this very austere process. It's called eightfold yoga. Ashtanga. Anga is limb and ashta is eight. So it begins with yama, and then the thing is niyama. So yama are the things that you're supposed to not do, and yama are the things that you should do. And I like to point out, in any discipline, you want to become a champion track and field runner or something, you have some propensity for that, all right, you got to get a coach, you have to practice carefully and step in just the right way, and what to speak, you want to learn a musical instrument. I remember I'd go to the example of learning how to play first the recorder and then the clarinet and then the flute when I was a kid. So in each case I had a teacher, and there was a don't do it this way, hold it this way, blow in this way, like that. So those are the do's and don'ts, anything you want to learn. So similarly, in the practice of yoga, especially this Ashtanga yoga, there are do's and don'ts. Like don'ts would be, okay, you don't carouse, in the evening and go to the bar somewhere, In other words, this is an obvious thing because the senses will all be and your consciousness will be flowing out, and you won't be focusing on anything, and you're not going to progress in yoga. So there's this self-restraint is the thing, and niyama are the things that you should do. And there's a list that Krishna gives. You go to a secluded place, you sit down on a certain kind of seat, you hold yourself in a certain way, all for enhancing, controlling the mind. And I think he mentions here, he'll talk about the breath control. You may have seen that as part of the pranayama. And this is also helps to keep the body strong and also to focus the mind, quiet the mind. And the whole purpose is to, again, focus on that Lord within the heart, that manifestation of God within the heart, so that ultimately, when you leave this body, you won't take another material birth. This is the first lesson. You go back to chapter 2, where Krishna begins his teachings to Arjuna, and it's all about the difference between the body and the soul. Shri Shri Radha Hari ki jai, Gauracharya ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadraji ki jai. So this is a basic principle of any. If you go to India, there's like 1.5 billion people. I mean, it's a huge number of people, and vast majority of them are. It's just second nature. Yes, there's the law of karma and transmigration and so forth, and it would be really good if we could end this process, because material life means birth, old age, disease, and death. Sometimes disease comes before the old age. We know that. But the idea is that this is the body. Each of our bodies is a very complex, wonderful machine. It's a construction. There's a tremendous intelligence behind it. I like to give the example. Just contemplate your own body, and you'll understand there's a higher intelligence that controls it. We didn't create it. It didn't come about by chance. That's the most ridiculous thing. To try to think of some complex, intricate machine just came by chance. If you find a watch, on the ground over there, maybe a child will think well, there's the grass, and then this watch grew. But any adult knows, no, somebody dropped the watch. That watch took a lot of intelligence to make. So whenever you have intelligence, there's a person there. There's a person who applied the intelligence. So the Bhagavad Gita basically begins from that yes, there is a supreme intelligence, and it belongs to the supreme person. And really what we learn in the Bhagavad Gita, one of the messages, that our whole difficulty in life is because we've forgotten our relationship with the Supreme. Where our attention is all on this phantasmagoria of the material world that's constantly changing, and we know there's so many difficulties. I mean, all of you are aware to some degree of the geopolitical situation in the world today. I remember, because I'm an old guy, there's a few people, maybe even someone remembers it, the Cuban Missile Crisis. You certainly heard of it. Early 60s, 1962. So I was 14 years old, and suddenly we hear about this major crisis in Cuba, that the Cubans now have atom bombs that were given by the Russians, because they were allied with Russia at that time, because they were afraid that America was going to invade, and take them over. So this would be a deterrent. But this was seen as a tremendous threat for America. That 90 miles away, we have all of these nuclear bombs. They can reach New York in 10 minutes, So suddenly there was a huge mobilization of the military in southern Florida, and they seemed to be preparing for an invasion. But luckily, Kennedy and Khrushchev, they were the leaders, they were communicating. They wanted to try to avoid a hot war which would destroy the world, nuclear Armageddon. So this was, day by day, this was a very real thing. I remember sitting in front of the TV, we had a black and white TV, and watching the news and just thinking, oh, are we doomed, And by God's arrangement, there was obviously a resolution to it, and it didn't happen. But this is what the material world means. And now we're experiencing directly the change in climate. Does anyone here not believe in climate change? Okay, that's very good. I think it's I've lived in this city for 34 years. And the climate has changed radically, especially in the last few years. I never woke up and it was 45 degrees, to go to the temple. Okay, it's 3:30 in the morning, but it was like, it's too cold. And all this rain, we used to have a rainy season, December, January. That was it in San Diego. Otherwise, it was sunny, between 70 and 80 degrees, you know, basically. It was just the way it was. That's why people like to move here. So this change, that's what it means to be in the material world. So there's this wonderful injunction from the Vedic literature, which even before I learned about Hare Krishna, I was studying, looking into yoga, you know. And this came about, and anyone who, I don't know if anyone grew up in India was related to it, but this it's like tamasi ma jyotir gama, mityum ma amitam gama. What is it? Asato ma sadgamaya. So what it is, it can be understood in two ways, the Sanskrit. One can be kind of an injunction, said, don't stay in the darkness, come to the light. Don't stay in this world of death, but come to the world of eternal life. And don't stay in this world of, what is it, Tamasi? Of temporary, of every eternal change, but come to the eternal world. Asato and Sat. Sat is eternal. Our nature as living beings, as souls, is Sat Chit Ananda. Eternal life, full of bliss and full of knowledge. Now we can compare what we have now. Certainly not eternal, and there's so many things we don't know. You know, ignorance can be a very dangerous thing. And where's the bliss? All right, we have high points of pleasure, but it's not eternal. In other words, Ananda means a deep happiness that doesn't change. That this is our birthright. This is who we really are, who we want to get to. So yoga is a process. It all depends on the mind. The mind is keeping us bound here, or it can be an agent for liberation, depending on how we train it. So these verses that I chanted in the purport are from a book called Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our main book. It's multi-volume. It's like what is it? 18? Not 8. It's 18 big volumes, and it begins where the Bhagavad Gita ends. Bhagavad Gita ends with Sarva Dharma Parityajya Mamekang Saranamaja. Just give up all the other dharmas and yogas that I've learned about and just surrender unto me. Then your life will be perfect. And so then Bhagavatam tells us how one does that, and examples of devotees who are doing that, and shows the history. It's more involved, but it's the same basic philosophy. So these verses from the Bhagavatam describe a great king. He wasn't a renunciant. He wasn't a yogi wandering in the forest or anything. He was a king, and he had so much material stuff to do. But it describes how each one of his, beginning with his mind on Krishna's lotus feet, and then he would use his words to glorify the Lord and everything he had, and at the same time run the kingdom. But in this way, he always remained transcendental and very peaceful and very blissful in his heart. And there's a whole story how a great powerful yogi challenged him. You know, yogis can get some certain mystical powers. They can read minds. You know, that's one of the things. And astral travel. These are not myths. It's actually possible to do that. To leave the body and travel in your subtle body to different places. So anyway, this is a powerful yogi, this is told in the Bhagavatam, who was envious of the king, because the yogi was accomplished yogi, had all these powers, but the king was getting all the honor because he was a great devotee. So he said, he's just a king, and I'm a great Brahmin, and Brahmins are supposed to be higher than the king, and I have these powers, so I'm going to try to make him look bad. And if he when he does that, I'll be offended from him, and then I'll call a demon, a fiery demon, and burn him to ashes. That was his plan. So to make a long story short, he challenged him, and the king was just praying to God, and he was saved by one of God's weapons, which is this chakra that he uses to, you know, kill miscreants. So the chakra came, and the demon that he had invoked was slain, and the chakra went after the Muni. His name was Durvasa Muni, and whereas Ambarish, he was just completely unperturbed when this fiery demon was coming at him. This is one of the benefits of Krishna consciousness, is that you can become fearless, because you know you can never die. The body may die; it's going to die one day or another, but you yourself are united with God, united with Krishna. You're going to the spiritual world, so you're able to face very difficult circumstances with equanimity. Whereas this yogi, he didn't have that power. He had mystic powers, but he hadn't really reconnected with Krishna. And so when that fiery chakra had killed the demon, it went after him, and he ran. Ran means that he used his powers of flight, mystic power. He went up to this planet, that planet. Finally, he went to Vaikuntha to find Narayan himself, whose chakra it was. He says, please call off your chakra. He says, I can't. You have to go back down and get the mercy of this king and apologize, basically, which he did. And of course, the king was very merciful. He called off the chakra. So this is the power of the devotee. He doesn't want these powers, but they're given to him by God when needed for his safety and to exalt him. So during this part of the 6th chapter, these verses describe the process of Ashtanga yoga, meditative yoga. But in each purport, Prabhupada brings it down back to Bhakti yoga, which is what we practice, is Krishna consciousness. And that Bhakti yoga ultimately surpasses this Ashtanga yoga. And we'll see, it's very interesting because in 2 verses, if we can get to them tonight, in text 20 to 23, he will describe the perfection of the yoga, samadhi. And that perfection, you'll see that is there in Bhakti yoga. But the difference is we can practice Bhakti yoga. It's been made easy enough for us to do it and perfect it, even in this Kali Yuga and even in this modern society. Whereas this Ashtanga yoga, Dhyāna yoga, who's going to go walking, go to the Himalayas and sit on a thing and break off? There's a few rare people who can do it, but it's not for the mass of people. Bhakti yoga, Krishna consciousness is. That's why he's sitting here in the middle of a big city in this temple that Srila Prabhupada, this spiritual master, worked so hard to establish all over the world, temples like this, so that there's an oasis of spiritual sanity, even in the middle of all this confusing Kali Yuga, where we can hear about Krishna, we can learn how to practice Krishna consciousness, and integrate it into our lives as much as possible. And the wonderful thing is, there's no loss or diminution. Even if you don't go back to Godhead in this life, in your next life, you'll have a situation where you can begin where you left off, so to speak, and try to complete the process. Whereas anything material, whether you're as rich as Bezos or some poor guy on the street, pushing and putting the carts, everything will change in the next life. You have to leave it all here. So all your material assets are taken from you at time of death, but your spiritual assets stay with you. That's the miracle. So it pays. It's the best investment we can make, is in Krishna consciousness. And you're just spending 5 minutes listening to me read the Bhagavad Gita. You've made a good investment. So let's continue investing, unless you have some questions about this particular verse. Yes, go ahead. Oh, can you use the mic? Give them the mic, because we have an audience actually in YouTube who.
Hi, I'm Julian. I just didn't know what the word abnegation meant.
Abnegation.
Abnegation, yeah.
Yeah, abnegation means renunciation.
Oh, okay.
Giving things up. Yeah, it's a similar word, yeah. All right, text 19. Still describing the yogi meditating. Yata dipo nivatasto nengate sopamasmata yogino yata chittasya yunjato yogam atmanaha. As a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist whose mind is controlled remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendent self. Notice the capital. There's 2 selves in each body. The soul, individual soul, and the supreme soul. So this is he's meditating on the super soul. Purport: a truly Krishna conscious person, always absorbed in transcendence, in constant undisturbed meditation on his worshipable Lord, is as steady as a lamp in a windless place. So this steadiness, and the Lord means what we call the super soul, or God within, and that's the cap S self. The small S self is we ourselves, we ourselves, the individual soul, who is very minute, but the good thing about it is we're indestructible. We're not going to die. We never were born and we never die as souls. The body is born, the body dies. Let's say the bodies are born and the bodies die, but the soul travels between them. And as mentioned, and again, just to reiterate, the goal is to end this process, and as in Prabhupada's immortal phrase, go back home, back to Godhead. This is the mission of every soul, although we don't know it. So that getting that knowledge of why and what it's like there, and why we should try it, and then how to do it. If we actually start it, then our faith will grow because we'll experience the benefits of it. I've been doing this. Tomorrow is actually my 51st anniversary of joining this Hare Krishna movement. I moved into the temple on March 27th, 1973 in New York. And by Krishna's grace, that was the place where the books were being produced. Now they're produced in different places on so many different languages, but at that time, the press was, for the whole movement, was located in that Brooklyn temple. And I didn't have a degree in English, but I was a pretty good student in high school. And I told the in charge there of the press, you know, I've been reading this Krishna book. We have a beautiful book that's called Krishna Book, all about Krishna's pastimes. And I found a lot of little mistakes in it, you know, spelling and things. And so they said, oh, really? You know, here, take this red pen, and you read it, you know, like that. And when you're done, give it back, and you'll incorporate the corrections in the reprinting. Where does that come from? Inside or outside? Okay. Can we maybe can close the door? There's a door to the kitchen. So I did that, and after a month or two, I was finished the book, and I gave it back to him and said, oh, very good. So now we should make this a part of your engagement. And that's why I started spending half my day, you know, looking at the books and correct before they were printed and proofreading. And then the rest of the 3 hours in the afternoon, we go on the street and chant, you know, which is very blissful. And then I was able to become an editor in '75. I worked on the Back to Godhead magazine. We have a periodical still being printed. It's bi-monthly now. And this way, all these 50 years, I've been working on this book. I've also helped, not in the original editing, but in finding little things that need to be fixed, you know. And so that's been a very fulfilling engagement. You know, I'm meditating on the philosophy all the time, and I'm giving this class every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday since 1989, and I don't want to do anything else. It's been very fulfilling. Just my little... I'm from New York. I was born in New York, in Long Island, and yeah, I was, you know, the '60s, child of the '60s, and anti-war demonstration. And thank Krishna's blessing that I didn't get too involved, you know, in drugs. I smoked some marijuana, you know, but and I met the devotees. Actually, it's amazing because there was a show. I don't know if anyone here remembers. The David Susskind show, ring any bells? Probably not. He was big in the 60s and 70s. And it was like, he would have guests on and they would talk various topics. So the Hare Krishna is becoming famous, dancing on the street, you know, so he invited them onto the program. And I had my own apartment, but I didn't have a TV or anything, so I went home to my parents' place that lived nearby, and black and white, and I watched this show, you know, when it first came out. This was 1971. And I somehow on my computer, I get on YouTube sometimes, and there was I don't know how it happened, but that particular show was being shown on it was some site of old TV shows, and there was, you know, people who I met when I joined, you know, 50 years earlier, and they were all like 20, 21, you know, everybody was so young. It was amazing. So I don't know if you're interested, but I will try to get the link for that thing, because it's quite remarkable. They were so fired up and so, what can I say, effulgent, you know, very blissful, that it really attracted me to check out Krishna consciousness. And that's and the first attraction was Srila Prabhupada himself. He was coming over so much trouble to come to America and be with us and teach. You know, it was very inspiring. So, okay, so we did 19, right? So now 20 to 23. This describes the ultimate goal of samadhi, of the yogi, and you'll see it's quite remarkable. Yatro padamate chittam nirudham yoga sevaya yatra chaivatman atmanam Pashyan atmani tushyati Sukhamatyantikam yattad Buddhigrayam matindriyam Veti yatra nachayvayam Stitas chalati tatpataha Yang labdva chapadang labham Manyate nadikam tataha Yasmin stito nadukena Gurunapi vichalyate Tam vidya dukkha samyoga Viyoga yoga sangitam. In the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self. Now notice it's the super self. And just to let you know, I fixed that from the lower cap self to the higher cap self. Otherwise, you're seeing yourself, but you're seeing the Supreme Soul in your heart. The ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth. And upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of the greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. Habibol Abby, one of our regulars. Purport. No, this is substantial purport. By practice of yoga, one becomes gradually detached from material concepts. This is the primary, we're on page 276. 276. By practice of yoga, one becomes gradually detached from material concepts. This is the primary characteristic of the yoga principle. And after this, one becomes situated in trance or samadhi, which means that the yogi realizes the supersoul through transcendental mind and intelligence without any of the misgivings of identifying the self, small s self, with the super self, capital S. And that's why I changed that, because if you leave that in the translation to the small s self, that is going to help you have a misgiving to confuse the small self with it. So it's definitely the super self that you're relishing. Yoga practice is more or less based on the principles of the Patanjali system. Some unauthorized commentators try to identify the individual soul with the super soul, and the monists think this to be liberation. But they do not understand the real purpose of the Patanjali system of yoga. There is an acceptance of the transcendental pleasure in the Patanjali system, but the monists do not accept this transcendental pleasure out of fear of jeopardizing the theory of oneness. The duality of knowledge and knower is not accepted by the non-dualist, but in this verse, transcendental pleasure, realized through transcendental senses, is accepted. And this is corroborated by Patanjali Muni, the famous exponent of the yoga system. The great sage declares in his Yoga Sutras 434, Purushartha shunyanam gunanam pati prasavaha kaivalyam swarupa patishta va chitti shaktiriti. This chitti shakti, or internal potency, is transcendental. Purushartha means material religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and, at the end, the attempt to become one with the Supreme. This oneness with the Supreme is called kaivalyam by the monist, but according to Patanjali, this kaivalyam is an internal or transcendental potency by which the living entity becomes aware of his constitutional position. In the words of Lord Chaitanya, this state of affairs is called Chaito Darpana Marjanam, or clearance of the impure mirror of the mind. This clearance is actually liberation, or Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. The theory of nirvana, also preliminary, corresponds with this principle. In the Bhagavatam 2.10.6, this is called Swarupena Vyavastitihi. The Bhagavad Gita also confirms this situation in this verse. So I'll try to explain some of these terms. We may run out of time. After nirvana, or material cessation, there is the manifestation of spiritual activities or devotional service to the Lord, known as Krishna consciousness. In the words of the Bhagavatam, Sorupena vivastati. This is the real life of the living entity. Maya, or illusion, is the condition of spiritual life contaminated by material infection. Liberation from this material infection does not mean destruction of the original eternal position of the living entity. Patanjali also accepts this by his words, Kaivalyam Sarupa Pratishta Va Chitti Shaktir Iti. This Chitti Shakti, or transcendental pleasure, is real life. This is confirmed in the Vedanta Sutta 1112 as Anandamayo Bhyasat. This natural transcendental pleasure is the ultimate goal of yoga and is easily achieved by execution of devotional service, or bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga will be vividly described in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. That's the next chapter. In the yoga system, as described in this chapter, there are two kinds of samadhi, called sampragyata samadhi and asampragyata samadhi. When one becomes situated in the transcendental position by various philosophical researchers, he is said to have achieved sampragyata samadhi. In the asampragyata samadhi, there is no longer any connection with mundane pleasure, for one is then transcendental to all sorts of happiness derived from the senses. When the yogi is once situated in that transcendental position, he's never shaken from it. Unless the yogi is able to reach this position, he is unsuccessful. Today's so-called yoga practice, which involves various sense pleasures, is contradictory. A yogi indulging in sex and intoxication is a mockery. Even those yogis who are attracted by the siddhis, or perfections, in the process of yoga are not perfectly situated. If yogis are attracted by the byproducts of yoga, then they cannot attain the stage of perfection, as is stated in this verse. Persons, therefore, indulging in the make-show practice of gymnastic feats or siddhis should know that the aim of yoga is lost in that way. The best practice of yoga in this age is Krishna consciousness, which is not baffling. A Krishna conscious person is so happy in his occupation that he does not aspire after any other happiness. There are many impediments, especially in this age of hypocrisy, to practicing Hatha Yoga, Dhyāna-yoga, and Jnana-yoga. That's Hatha Yoga is the physical asanas. Dhyāna-yoga is the meditative yoga we're studying, and Jnana-yoga is mental, using the mind for inquiry. But there is no such problem in executing karma yoga or bhakti yoga. As long as the material body exists, one has to meet the demands of the body, namely eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. But a person who is in pure bhakti yoga, or in Krishna consciousness, does not arouse the senses while meeting the demands of the body. Rather, he accepts the bare necessities of life, making the best use of a bad bargain, and enjoys transcendental happiness in Krishna consciousness. He is callous toward incidental occurrences, such as accidents, disease, scarcity, and even the death of a most dear relative. But he is always alert to execute his duties in Krishna consciousness, or bhakti yoga. Accidents never deviate him from his duty. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 2.14, Agamapayino anityas tam statikshasa bharata. Which means these difficulties come and go, and one has to tolerate them. He endures all such incidental occurrences because he knows that they come and go and do not affect his duties. In this way, he achieves the highest perfection in yoga practice. So there's a lot to discuss in this purport, but the basic point here is that this description of samadhi, he sees the self by the pure mind. So there's a revelation that you develop inner vision, and you're able to see the super soul within the heart. And in Krishna consciousness, that means that you begin to perceive the presence of God in the immediate things. Like I like to point out that this chanting is so powerful because it's the presence of God in sound. It's the divine sound, divinity in sound. And just by chanting it, no matter what state you're in, you're contacting the Lord, and the purification process begins. We don't realize what's happening. We have a whole history of births, of human births, that we performed good or bad acts. There's good karma back there, and there's also bad karma. And all of that is being played out in our present life. But when you chant Hare Krishna, the karma is changed. The karma can be eradicated. That's the only way you can eradicate it. Because Krishna is ultimately in charge, and he says, oh, they're chanting my name, boom, your destiny is changed. You don't know, but it is. And so that's just the beginning, because we're looking to get complete purification so we can regain our natural state of blissful servants of the Lord, participating in His pastimes. See, in Krishna, in the ultimate loka or planet of Krishna, it's not all, awe and reverence. Awe and reverence, because this is an important mood. God is so great, I'm so very small, let me just take shelter and pray, this is good. It's a good first step. But the ultimate goal of Bhakti Yoga is to have a more intimate relationship with Krishna. Even if it's one of servant, still it's a servant in intimacy. But the higher three rasas or relationships, being a friend of Krishna. Krishna, I mean, if you were God, what would you do? Would there be ups and downs? No, there'd just be ups. That's why there's this little phrase, Anandamaya Bhyasat. This is from the Vedanta Sutra. There's a Vedic book called the Vedanta Sutra, which Sutra means an aphorism, and Vedanta means the ultimate knowledge, the end of knowledge. So one of those Vedanta Sutras was in this purport, Anandamaya Bhyasat, which simply means that the Supreme is full of bliss all the time. And how do we know? Abhyasat, by his pastimes, by what he does from his activities. We get an account of that. So we're part and parcel of Krishna, you see? And we've forgotten that, and we're acting like these bodies, but we're not the bodies. But if you're able to engage the body, the senses, the mind, the intelligence, by connecting to Krishna, that's what yoga means, yoke, to connect, in service, then you can awaken to your real nature. We're part and parcel of He who is Anandamaya Bhyasad, full of Ananda. That means we are by nature full of Ananda. So how to regain that platform? That's the process of Krishna consciousness. And it's natural. And we should know that the majority of living beings are in that state in the spiritual world. So you read the wonderful things in the pastimes of Krishna. One of our nice books is Krishna Book. It's called Krishna Book. And it's a kind of a summary study, a running translation of the 10th canto of this Srimad Bhagavatam I mentioned. And it describes Krishna's Leela pastimes on this earth 5,000 years ago. He grew up as a baby, and he went to a place where no one knew he was God. He was just this most lovable child. And he had so many adventures there. And sometimes he would reveal his divinity. He would do something that no baby could do. Like, kill this big demoness who came to try to kill him. But then the people would forget it because they would be covered over by it, so they could just regard him as this helpless child, and he needed the nourishment. And so that he relishes that. God doesn't want to always be, fear of God. No. He wants us to have a relationship of a friendship relationship, or even a parental relationship. These are the relationships in this world that we have that makes life worth living. Friends, when we're children, we love our mother, and the mother loves us, and the father, and without that, it would be unbearable. But that all of those relationships are reflections of the ultimate relationship with God, and unfortunately, they're temporary. The mother loves the child grows up, and goes away. I remember my mother, I would go to see her. I was in the movement. I would fly from Miami. There was this incredible flight, $60 round trip. This is 1983, 84. It's a special flight. So I get, and she would still want to try to feed me, like she did when I she was going. That's the relationship we had, So I would go, give me some baked potato or something, I can't have any meat, obviously. So that, and it persisted, and she passed away at 96. She was, and I was with her just a few weeks before. She was living with my brother. And she was always favorable, She had the magazine coming every month, and when I would visit her, we would chant together a little bit. So near the end there, I said, "Mom, it's time for japa," and I taught her, she couldn't learn the mantra, but we went 2 names at a time: Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Rama, just like that. I have a recording of it. And 2 weeks later she passed because he was my brother and I was visiting. I wasn't there at the time. But all of that is auspicious for the next birth. She was asking, well, where do we go from here? And I said, Mom, you have a very auspicious future. Because the body falls, but the soul goes on. So anyway, But we should try to understand, about this process and take it. We can integrate it at our own speed, whatever you want. I began with 2 rounds a day. I would chant before work or on my way to work, driving. And then I would come home, I would do some more hatha yoga, maybe read something like that. This is what I started with. But somehow or other, to develop your knowledge of this and associate with devotees, come. We had a wonderful festival on Sunday. It was an appearance of our main avatar, Lord Chaitanya, who's actually Krishna himself. He's the one who gave this Hare Krishna mantra to the world. It was known before, but it was, by the yogis. But he said, no, everyone should chant, Dance, chant, play instruments, sing, dance, get tired, take some prasadam, and then do some more chanting, It was a simple, simple process. And that was actually how Prabhupada began the movement. He gave some the classes, but the first thing was chanting for a good long time, then a little class, more chanting, and the prasadam. That was his, and it took off. New York, San Francisco, right in the middle of the summer of love, 1967. It's Krishna's arrangement. Come on, that he came at that time. And the fact that the Cuban Missile Crisis didn't blow up the earth, 3 years later, Prabhupada comes to America. So Krishna can, to inspire people to do anything. So I see it that way. So this just to end here, this translation describing, in that joyous state, rejoice in the self. This see the self, that's Krishna. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness. Where do you find that in the material world? Boundless transcendental happiness that doesn't end. And that's Ananda. Realized through transcendental senses. So these very senses can become purified. Just like the ears, is the most important to hear. And so to hear the sound of Krishna's name and really feel, oh, this is the presence of my Lord, my kind Lord, and like that. But it doesn't start that way. You're just listening carefully to the sound, but it has that effect because it's spiritually powerful sound. It's Krishna himself. It's because it's abhinna nama namino. Abhinna means no separation between the name and the named. It's inconceivable, but that's why the movement is spread, and that's why those who've chanted it for some time feel the benefits. But the ultimate experience we have from the Shastra, and I'll share this again. Maybe I'll end these classes, as I've done the last couple of times, with the first verse of the Shikshastika, which describes the glories of chanting together, and also with a little poem. So it goes like this. This is all about chanting Hare Krishna. Cheto darpanamarjanam bhavamahadavagni nirvapanam shreya kaidavachandikapa tadanam vidyavadhu jivanam anandam buddhivardhanam pradipadam purnamita swadanam sarvatmastapadam padam vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. All glories to the chanting of Shri Krishna's holy names, which easily extinguishes samsara's blazing flames by polishing the lust-encrusted mirror of the heart. That chanting is the waxing moon that knows the secret art of causing the white lotus of good fortune to unfurl its petals far and wide throughout this bleak and blighted world. Of transcendental knowledge which will take us to life's goal, the chanting of the name of Krishna is the life and soul. The ocean of ecstatic bliss floods far beyond its bounds wherever Krishna's merciful and mystic name resounds. Indeed, whenever Krishna's names are sung in congregation, at every step one tastes a joy that knows no limitation. So hear with great attention as I earnestly request, please chant Shri Krishna's holy names and be supremely blessed. The soothing nectar of the name will bathe your consciousness, bestow pure love for Krishna, and eradicate distress. And that's the basis of this whole Hare Krishna movement. And that verse was written by Krishna himself in the form of Lord Chaitanya. For this age, there's no other way of really advancing but taking the chanting, and becoming serious chanter. There's no loss, no diminution, and it just gets better and better. So we only have 1 minute left, so I have time for maybe one more little poem. So this I came up with, every body dies, like the body, every body dies. Every body dies, nobody dies. Wake up, and open your eyes. You're not that body, you're pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. That's another little summary of the Hare Krishna movement. So now let's prepare for our nice little kirtan here in front of the beautiful deities. And then you can take, all of you kind of had some prasadam already, did you? Tacos. So you can just keep chanting. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari. And we have another class tomorrow if you're interested. Same time. Same place. All right.